All right. We are going to go from one damn good guest to another damn good guest. We are joined with Dimitri Lascaris. How you doing, my man? You doing okay today?
As always, I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm privileged to be put in the same category as Dr. Wilmer Leon. I love that man.
Listen,
Very kind remark from on your side. Thank you.
I'm doing what the hen do, the best that I can do. I'm Dimitri Lascaris. He's a lawyer, journalist, activist from Montreal, Quebec. Dimitri, in 2020, ran for the leadership of the Green Party, and he is host of Reason to Resist. Check him out on YouTube, another damn good channel. Thank you for joining me, man. I really do appreciate it. I guess we have to start where I left off with Dr. Leon. Alaska Summit, Donald Trump, the panicky, desperate play goes from 50 days to 12 days, 10 days. Then all of a sudden blows off, taco being taco, blows off the sanctions or the tariffs, secondary tariffs on China, only puts on a percentage on India because he understood that the US economy couldn't necessarily tolerate it and people were going to feel upset. This is on top of the other world tariffs, these ridiculous things that he's effectively enacted. He sends Witkoff into Russia to beg for a negotiation. I don't know what Witkoff told Putin. It's possible that something was offered that at the very least allowed, let's say, some context where Putin was willing to meet for further discussions. Before we get into it, what are your thoughts on that, just in general?
Well, I think every discussion about Donald Trump should begin with the understanding and acknowledgement that Donald Trump is currently committing genocide. That is the most important consideration when you are trying to understand where this man's going, what his priorities are, what his values are, whether he can be trusted. He's committing a genocide. He's not only committing genocide, he's committing a genocide that is more brazen and public and audacious than any genocide in human history. This happened right now. This is an ancient history. You know, something happened long ago and Donald Trump saw the light. No, it's happening right now. So what inferences can we draw from this? The man has no conscience. There are no red lines for this man. He's a psychopath. Peace means nothing to him, and he is completely and utterly untrustworthy. Nothing that comes out of that man's mouth can be believed. Nothing. The operating assumption should be that if Donald Trump says something that suits his agenda or makes him look good, he's lying shamelessly.
So he's a U.S. president.
So
that's what you're saying.
So how horrifying that is, but it's the reality that we have to deal with. And so I see everything through that lens. And it always amazes me, Jamal, how many times I've watched discussions about Donald Trump's priorities, strategy, to the extent he has any in other contexts outside of Palestine, where that isn't even discussed. It's not even mentioned, let alone the starting point of the discussion. That should be the starting point of the discussion. So I think we can safely infer that Donald Trump has absolutely no interest in making peace with the Russian Federation on terms that are sustainable and would be just for all parties concerned. That's just, take that off the table right away. Take it off the table right away that Donald Trump can be trusted. So whatever deal Donald Trump does, whether it's in this Alaska summit or 6 months down the road or 2 years down the road, isn't worth the paper that it's written on. And the only way that you can, as a counterparty to a negotiation with Donald Trump, secure your interests is to demand that Donald Trump act on and implement whatever concessions he's agreed to make before you implement any of your concessions. Okay, so for example, if Russia were to do a peace deal premised on Donald Trump lifting sanctions on Russia, Russia should say, if I think that they're acting rationally, lift the sanctions first. Then we'll do our end of the deal. We will not implement any part of our deal, none that has any lasting effect. Okay, maybe like they would put into effect some temporary ceasefire on aerial attacks for 30 days or something. Maybe they do that.
No, shouldn't even do that. No, yeah, I agree with your first point. No,
I'm on the same page as you. I wouldn't do anything without seeing concrete action actually implemented by the Trump administration, which amounts to real serious concessions. And even then you have to be careful because they might, just reimpose sanctions, for example. If they said, okay, we're lifting the sanctions, they lift the sanctions, they might just reimpose them. So you have to be extremely careful if you're dealing with this psychopathic character. And I think at the end of the day, it's very hard to say why Vladimir Putin has agreed to this meeting. It's very hard to say why Donald Trump is agreeing to this meeting. But I think we can safely infer that Donald Trump's motivation is not to achieve a just and lasting peace. And Donald Trump's Donald Trump can't be trusted in any such negotiation. So I also would point out that a State Department spokeswoman just said that this is not going to be a negotiation at all. There was a press briefing in which she said they're just going to talk. They're just going to have a sort of let's get reacquainted discussion. So they're not even calling it a negotiation anymore. They're lowering expectations, and I really don't know what to make of this, Jamal. I'm befuddled. If I were advising Vladimir Putin, first of all, I would tell him, don't step foot on U.S. soil. Do not step foot on the soil of any Western country. You cannot trust these people. If Donald Trump is prepared to carry out a genocide, he's prepared to assassinate the top general of Iran, who's to say that they wouldn't do something to Vladimir Putin? I'm not saying it's likely. I don't think it's likely. I think probably nothing will happen to Vladimir Putin. But is it a significant risk? Yes, it is. And so to me, it's strange that the Russians appear to have agreed to do this on U.S. soil. But I do think whatever their thinking may be in that regard, I really would be surprised if they expect any kind of durable peace to emerge from this. And I think this has a lot more to do with managing expectations of Russia's allies and their own people. If you look at polls that are coming out of reputable polling agencies like the Levada Center, which is very critical of Vladimir Putin. It's no friend of Vladimir Putin and is regularly quoted by the press. And it shows consistently high approval ratings for Putin. But it also shows that Russians want to find a way to bring this war, a substantial percentage of the population, want to find a way to bring this war to an end on terms that secure Russia's future. So I think Vladimir Putin is cognizant of that, and he wants to be seen to be making every effort to engage Donald Trump in a discussion. And I think he also is cognizant of how his allies in China and India and other countries, Brazil, around the world, might be impacted by their support for Russia. And so he wants to show them that he's making every effort to conclude a peace deal with Donald Trump. So I think this is very much an exercise in demonstrating the Russian Federation's good faith when it comes to negotiating with the US government. But does that mean that this is going to result in any kind of a durable peace deal? I would be shocked if that happened. I really would. That would blow my mind. I hope it does. I really do. I would be thrilled if this resulted in a sustainable peace. But I just don't see it.
So I agree with you about Donald Trump. If he's, I keep telling my audience, habitual liars lie. If he's opening his mouth, he's probably lying. Two, Donald Trump would not be begging for a peace deal if he wasn't losing. Like, can you think of any other situation where Donald Trump is at a disadvantage or has an advantage and doesn't press it? I mean, look at what he's doing to Vonderland. Look at what he's doing to Japan, where he's like, hey, I'm bringing Japan here and they're going to give us all of this money. And meaning he has a habit of intentionally making the opposition look bad. And some of these things are not even opposition. I mean, Europe is supposed to be his vassals. And he's like, we're going to put sanctions on them. And they're going to put all of this money into our country. And look at Vonderland. Look how stupid she looks because we're taking advantage of her. When he has an advantage, he's a sociopath. He pushes his advantage. Mm-hmm. He's not going to make a deal with Hamas because he's a sociopath. He's okay with killing babies. It's an advantage. He's going to press his advantage. The issue is that with Russia and China, he does not have an advantage. It's that. And so on some level, you're in a military situation where you are losing badly, where from the standpoint of the front line is just crashed and it is continuously collapsing. I mean, there are estimates that Russia went 110 kilometers and went in 24 hours. That's astonishing. That's only going to get worse. They're going to hit the front line or the last line of defense of Ukraine and Donbass. And with the speed at which they're moving, when that collapses, all hell breaks loose. All bets are off. And there's going to be a collective, you know what, fit in the West. Trump knows that. He has to know that. So it's not like I'm doing 50 days, 10 days. Okay, now we need to negotiate for no reason. That's desperation. That's panic that's setting in. That's not out of nowhere. So I agree with you. He's not doing it because he wants to. He's doing it because on some level he believes he has to. He doesn't care about the Ukrainian troops. He doesn't care about the babies that are in Gaza. He doesn't care about the Yemenis when he's murdering civilians. He doesn't care about that stuff. He's a sociopath. And so that monster is being dragged to the well because that monster is in a situation where the level of humiliation that is going to take place when he fails and loses is overwhelming. That's my thought. Now, whether or not that monster can accept a loss on an epic scale in a war that they've spent hundreds of billions of dollars for, that they have invested 3 years of propaganda, lies, nonsense, and everything else in order to justify. That's an open question to me. I don't know that. I don't know. I mean, I agree with you on the other part with Putin also. Let's always realize Putin is somewhat of a diplomat. I mean, the West makes him out to be this fire-breathing monster riding a bear, bare-chested. And he may ride bears, bare-chested, who knows? He seems like a powerful man. But ultimately, he's a diplomat. And honestly, he is far more moral than the evil monsters. I mean, to the degree that you could say a politician is moral, than the monsters that have effectively provoked a war that got 100,000 Russians killed and 1 million Ukrainians killed, and that are using Ukrainians as a battering ram, like meaning acting as if they have no value to their life and just throwing them into a meat shipper. Like that's pretty outrageous, meaning he's not the guy who they claim he is. If he was that guy, I don't think they would be acting this way, frankly. They'd be terrified. Mm-hmm. So he is. Mark always said that Putin always freaks him out because they never know if he's going to negotiate. It's like there are times where he shouldn't, and he's willing to still go and listen and potentially negotiate. Okay, this might be one of those times. He is chasing safety, from my point of view, and he wants something, whether it's 5 years, 10 years. He wants something that allows some level of stability for Russia. That's what I think he wants, ultimately. I think that was the entire point of the war. You guys are expanding NATO to a border. You're making it unsafe for us. You're trying to put us in a Hobbs choice. This is intolerable. War is a better option as opposed to allowing it to take place. So if he thinks that Trump is in a fix, if Trump is seemingly putting out some kind of deal, even if Putin gets his core wants, he may be open to the deal in this case. And there may be some fudge between these two. Now, maybe there's not. I don't know. Donald Trump is a flagrant liar. And so who knows where his head is? He can go tell the Europeans, yeah, I'm going to be very severe with Putin, and then get there and effectively say, please give me something so I can get out of this because I'm screwed in this situation. I don't know. Or you can have an American president that in no way can accept what Russia is demanding because even their core demands are too much for an American president to accept. It's probably that. It's probably that. So, look, I agree with you. Trump is a flagrant liar. You can't trust him for anything. You can't trust America for anything on this stuff. Any quote-unquote deal that you get, you need to ensure that they implement first. You can't have another Minsk 2 or, this can't be Minsk 3 in this case. You spent too much blood and treasure for it. America has shown itself to be radically dishonest and distrustworthy. So yeah, I agree. I guess if that's true, though, I mean, let me ask it this way. Do you think there's any chance that an American president can accept? But effectively, it will most likely be a surrender document by the Russian president. Is there any leeway from your point of view?
Well, it depends on what the American president is willing to risk. If you're willing to risk your own life, yeah. You can, but you are,
you really think his life is at risk? You really think if he makes a deal, they're going to kill him? Because Dr. Leon said the same thing.
But they killed Kennedy. They killed Kennedy. I don't believe this shit that And by the way, a majority of Americans don't believe it either. If you look at polls, they don't believe that JFK was killed by a lone wolf,
No,
who was a
I
communist
don't believe
sympathizer.
it.
No, who believes that crap anymore? Okay.
Yeah.
The deep state, exactly who was involved, I don't know. There's not enough evidence for us to be able to identify the exact perpetrators. We can make some educated guesses, but they killed Kennedy. Other presidents have been assassinated in U.S. history. Trump almost got his head blown off. Exactly in what circumstances, what was going on there is very, very unclear. But nonetheless, sure, any U.S. president who departs from the neocon status quo in a serious way and tries to make a just and durable peace with the world and accept the fact that the United States is just one of several powerful states and it has to make accommodation to other countries in the world, I believe is putting his or her life on the line. Absolutely. But if you're willing to take that risk, it doesn't mean necessarily that they will be assassinated, but it's a risk. If they're willing to take that risk, they can do it. They have the power to do it. But Donald Trump doesn't want that outcome. And I think the ultimate proof is just listen to what's coming out of the mouths of people who are under Donald Trump's control. So let's talk about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance just did an interview. It was the most remarkable interview, Jamal. I just shaking my head. He says, we really need to bring this to an end. All those poor, Ukrainians and Russians, they're dying. This is needless, But we've told our European partners that if they want to buy the weapons from us and give them to the Ukrainians, we're fine with that. What? Right. What you said? You just said you want to stop the killing, but in the same breath, you're telling us that you're happy to see your European vassals buy weapons from the United States, give them to Ukrainians to prolong the war and sustain the killing. And this is consistent with the message. We talked about this before that Pete Hegseth delivered right in February, right after Donald Trump came back into the White House. Pete Hegseth delivered a speech to the Ukraine contact group in Brussels, in which he said precisely this: we want you to ratchet up your military spending, assume the burden for arming Ukraine, arm Ukraine. We're going to shift our attention elsewhere and primarily towards China. Right. And we're going to have a division of labor. So just listen to the words coming out of the mouths of the people Donald Trump controls. Another person Donald Trump controls, whatever anybody might say, is Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky has ruled out any territorial concessions at all. I don't believe for one second that Volodymyr Zelensky would do that unless he had the green light from Washington. There's no that way. Well,
I disagree with you on that one. I totally do. Zelensky has his own. What happens if Zelensky accepts territorial concessions with the band of Nazis that floats around him on a daily basis, that is ready to string him up if they think he's going disloyal?
Yeah, sure. But the U.S. government has the power to spirit him out of the country and put him in some villa in Miami. They have the ability to do that. So I agree with you. I totally agree with you. His life would be at risk. But
do you believe that when Zelensky and Trump and Vance got in the White House, that was all staged?
I don't know. I don't know quite what to make of that. But I do think that Zelensky was humbled by the experience. I think Zelensky was humbled. Zelensky got the memo and said, dude, these guys, I shouldn't get out of line because otherwise they're going to make mincemeat out of me and they'll humiliate me publicly. So I don't know whether it was staged or not, but at the end of the day, the messages that are coming out of Trump's vassals. I mean, do you actually believe that Zelensky is a free agent? Seriously? When his government is saying the civil service is funded by American taxpayers, where his military, to the extent he has a functional army left anymore, it's hanging by a thread only due to the generosity and good graces of the U.S. military industrial complex. I mean, I don't think Zelensky regards himself as a free agent. I think Zelensky ultimately, and I'm not to say he doesn't go off script from time to time, because after all, he is a buffoon. Okay, he's an idiot. Let's be clear about this. And quite possibly, he's also a cokehead for all we know. There are indications of that too. So he's a bit of a wild card, and he sometimes goes off script. But fundamentally, I think Volodymyr Zelensky knows where his bread is buttered, and he's not going to say anything that he thinks is going to, fundamentally alienate the Trump administration. And what he's saying, which is antithetical to peace, is consistent with what J.D. Vance is saying. J.D. Vance is saying something that's antithetical to peace. Buy the weapons from us, give them to Ukraine. Bob's your uncle. We're perfectly fine with that. Pete Hegseth is saying something that's antithetical to peace. So when you look at and Lindsey Graham, who is Trump's golfing buddy, is saying all kinds of things that are wildly antithetical to peace.
Yeah.
So, Trump is trying to seem clever, how Vladimir Putin is always the consummate diplomat in his public commentary, but then you have people like Dmitry Medvedev who are kind of reading you the riot act and telling you how it is. In a way, I think Trump is trying to do that, although he's much less good at it and, much clumsier at it. At the end of the day, look at the totality of the messaging that is coming out of people who are under the control of the Trump administration, of Donald Trump himself. And the totality of the message that they are delivering unambiguously is anti-peace. It is pro-war, which is consistent with what I said at the outset, which is this is a genocidal regime. This regime has no interest in peace. None.
Dimitri, I so disagree with you on this. I love you to death, but I so disagree with you on this. Let me explain why. Because there are two moving pieces that I think is taking place, or three. One, it is not inconsistent for the United States to say, we don't want to deal with this. We want to move to China. That's been consistent for the last, going back to Obama and the Asia pivot. They just haven't been bright enough to do it. They've been keep getting bogged down either in the Middle East or bogged down in Ukraine for all of these years. They do want to make that pivot. The United States is $37 trillion of debt. It can't do both. We don't have the weapons to do both. We don't have the time to do both.
I agree with all of that.
So we want a division of labor. We want, hey, Europe, you take this. We want to be out. We don't want to keep dealing with this. We want to be out. Meaning those things aren't inconsistent. It's not that Donald Trump has given up primacy. He still wants to be a hegemon. It's just he wants labor to be changed over. Europe, you try to deal with the Russians. Israel, you commit your genocide and deal with the Middle East. We will move over to the Pacific. That's not inconsistent. We will come back around.
I'm not seeing where you and I disagree so far, because right now we're completely on the same page. So where do we?
It's not that, I guess my point is, it's not that they aren't warlike or that they're giving up on war. It's just the means in which they're trying to do war. It's not like we're giving up on this notion of the unipolar moment. We just kind of need vassals in order to kind of handle other parts and responsibilities. Right. Zelensky knows that the US president has a difficult time walking away, because if he could have walked away, he would have just walked in the beginning. So Zelensky is willing to push it in the same way that you may get countries that are willing to push and provoke nuclear war, saying, hey man, if you do this, we might go to nuclear war. Well, hey, if you do this, we may go to nuclear war. It's not that both sides want it. And at the end of the day, if Donald Trump is like, F it, I'm out, Zelensky will bend over quickly and spread eagle in a heartbeat. You're right that he is not an individual actor in this. All things being equal, neither is Europe. But Europe will complain, and they will put up their red lines. They was like, oh, this is outrageous. I can't believe you're going to do this. By the same token, you'll also get the UK saying, you need to shut up. You're going to make daddy mad, and daddy is going to leave. So yeah, they'll bitch and complain and moan and all of this other stuff. But at the end of the day, if Donald Trump walked, they will fall in line. But they know that a US president has a much harder time walking. So yeah, he is rogue in a certain degree. It's not, I guess I'm saying it's not inconsistent, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, are you saying that Donald Trump genuinely wants to bring this war to an end?
I think Donald Trump has a problem.
So let me rephrase the question, okay? So I want to draw a distinction, as I'm sure you accept and understand, that between a ceasefire and a durable peace, okay? I'm absolutely on board with you if you're saying that Donald Trump wants a ceasefire. Oh yeah, yes. Totally. Because that will enable them to do this pivot, and then they can come back later, and finish off Russia in their minds.
Right. Yes.
So, yeah, totally. I agree with that. He wants that. I've been talking up until now about a durable peace, about something that addresses Russia's core concerns and will last, and it won't see a resumption of the war in a few years' time. The latter is something I don't believe for 1 second that Donald Trump wants that, even though he says he wants it. He doesn't want that. What he wants is either a dramatic reduction in the fighting or a cessation for some temporary period of time, so that the U.S. can, which has very limited stocks that have been enormously weapon stocks that have been enormously depleted. He wants, a pause or at least a reduction in the intensity of the hostilities in Ukraine so that they can reallocate their resources to West Asia and the Pacific eventually.
Agreed.
Okay, so there we're on the same page. But that doesn't mean Donald Trump wants a durable peace. Donald Trump has no interest in a peace. Or I guess I could put it differently and say he'd be happy if the durable peace was on the terms of the U.S. hegemon. Sure.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
We get to exploit your country, Russia. We get to, have your resources for, a dime, and we can partition your country. We can install some vassal like, Boris Yeltsin in power, some corrupt vassal. Sure, that kind of a peace Trump would love, but that's not on the table. That's gone. That opportunity has been squandered.
Yeah,
So
that agree with you.
Yeah, however you slice it, whatever Donald Trump is trying to accomplish, if he gets his way, will not result in a lasting peace, in my view. That's what I'm saying in a nutshell. But I do believe he would very much like a ceasefire.
Yeah, I think he finds himself in a fix. I think this whole thing of like Afghanistan, when Afghanistan fell and you had people hanging on Chinook helicopters, whatever those huge planes are, that stuff is humiliating. And, when he came in office, he's like, oh, I don't like losers. Joe Biden was a loser, et cetera. I would imagine he has military people coming to him saying, sir, I know what you're saying openly. In real life, they are collapsing, they are crumbling, and it's happening faster every day. This is an issue. And if you don't get ahead of it, it's going to be worse. Meaning you need a face-saving mechanism, even if it's a deal, meaning as a ceasefire, something to freeze the stuff while you go into negotiations, even if those negotiations don't necessarily last. You need something to stop this in the moment. That's what I think. I agree with you. I don't think it's long-lasting peace at all. I think what Putin wants is a long-lasting peace. Yeah. And the catch is he politically savvy enough to try to wrangle that out of whatever they're having this conversation about?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's remember that Donald Trump considers himself to be the consummate negotiator, right? He says, "Oh, how many times have we heard him say, this war wouldn't have happened if I were there, and I'm going to bring this to I just laugh when I watch these videos from the campaign, the presidential campaign, where he says, "I'm going to bring this war to an end within 24 hours, and this is how I'm going to do it." So he goes and he tells us how he's going to do it. I'm going to sit Volodymyr Zelensky down at a table. And then I'm going to get Vladimir Putin on the other side of the table, and they're going to talk to each other, and I'm going to tell them to make peace, and they're going to make peace. What? You think this is your grand strategy? This man is
all he knows.
Delusional belief in his ability to negotiate. I think he sucks as a negotiator. I've been involved in many a high-stakes negotiation in my life as a class actions lawyer. I don't purport to be the greatest negotiator on earth, but I do know a thing or two about it. And from what I can tell, Donald Trump is a horrible negotiator who thinks he is the best negotiator on God's green earth. So I think he's going into this thinking that, the aura, the power, the charm of Donald Trump, the negotiator, is going to take over, and he's going to get his way with Putin. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's part of what's motivating this meeting, but I do agree with you. It would be very surprising if there aren't at least a few bright people in the Pentagon who are telling Donald Trump Ukraine's in real trouble, because it is. It's in real trouble.
To make this even worse, which I got to be honest, I disagree with Dr. Leon on this. I would have called the meeting off immediately when I heard some nonsense like this. This is Trump, who has no cards in this process, who, if he had the capability of doing this, he would have already done it because, again, he's a man-child with a gun. But he comes out and says this today, again, just to be very clear, Trump begged Russia for the meeting, not the other way around. Trump begged Russia for the meeting.
To stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will.
What will the consequences
There will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences, yes.
I'm going to stop the war after my meeting on Friday. Now, to be fair, after your meeting on Friday can be 5 years, right? That's also after your meeting on Friday. So he's not entirely lying if he could find a way to stop the war. That is not the spirit of the question. But Donald Trump is able to the truth, right? It's the premise that is like, there are going to be severe consequences if so-and-so doesn't happen. If I was Putin, I would have came out and said, meeting is off. Done. I didn't ask for this meeting. You did.
Me too. I'm really befuddled by this one, Jamal. I'm not sure what, I offered the best explanation that I could. I think that, Putin is cognizant of the need for the Russian Federation to be seen to be engaging in negotiations, even in very, very, shall we say, suspect circumstances. That's my best guess as to what's going on. But I on the whole, I really can't make sense of it. I don't know what's. I don't know what is the thing about going to Alaska to meet with Donald Trump at this particular moment.
Yeah,
I should add one other thing though. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
There may have been things said in that meeting with Witkoff, the war criminal, as I like to refer to him, which are influencing the government's thinking in ways that we don't really appreciate. We do know that a senior Russian political leader came out, I think it was Ushakov, and said they made an offer that was acceptable. So there may have been things said in that meeting by that billionaire war criminal dunce Witkoff, which persuaded the Russian Federation's government that this was a useful exercise. So I don't know.
That's my assumption. That's the only assumption that makes sense to me. It feels very weird to me to say, hey, Putin, we would like you to come to an open-ended meeting with Donald Trump, just to talk. It's like, yeah, no, get out of here. Why are you here? Why are you here? We'll even let you in, right? Like, why am I doing that? I could tell you no from the phone. I don't need this meeting. It's a different thing if you say, look, we're offering so and so and so and so. Okay, that may be different. That may be basis of a conversation. Hell, I may even be willing to go to Alaska to have that conversation. Because as you point out, if the goal is, let's say a ceasefire, I don't think Russia believes that the United States is going to have this kind of lasting peace and all of this stuff. I don't think they're that naive. But 5 years? Maybe. Wins beget wins. And who knows how long America lasts in the context of a country that can even keep this up, or Europe lasts. In 10 years, Europe may not have the same leaders. You might have a different political system or political situation. Maybe. Like that, it depends on how they're looking at it. I mean, when I was talking to Arno was like, dude, you don't get forever. You get a decade at the most. It's cynical, but it's the way he's looking at it. You get a decade. I said, yeah, but they're going after Azerbaijan. Yeah, it's always a game. It's always, it's been this way for hundreds of years. It just is what it is. And people like me in America is like, what do you mean? It's like, what are you talking about? Like, they may be more cynical in the way that they look at what they can get out of any kind of political situation. And they may think, this is the best we get. Let's take it. Maybe we get more out of it. Maybe America collapses. Maybe the political system in America becomes an issue. Maybe the BRICS currencies damages the way the dollar is used. Maybe. You don't know, right? So I don't know. Putin did say this, though. This came out recently. I think this came out yesterday or today. This came out today, actually, where Putin finally said something about the meeting that was supposed to take place. And apparently the meeting is going to be far more than just Ukraine, but it's going to be predicated on Ukraine, if that makes sense. Vladimir Putin has admitted new agreements with the United States on strategic weapons. The president said that Russia is ready for new agreements with the United States on strategic offensive weapons, but only on condition that long-term peace conditions are created in Ukraine. And so he said this at a meeting with the country's top leadership representatives of the cabinet and administration dedicated to preparing a meeting with Trump in Alaska. According to Putin, the American side, quote, making energetic and sincere efforts, unquote, to stop hostilities and work out an agreement that will be beneficial to all parties of the conflict. Okay, for one, I don't believe for a moment it's going to be beneficial to all parties of the conflict. The U.S. is only looking out for U.S. interests. But when America is in a situation where it doesn't have a choice, and oblivion is at the other side of that, you may be able to wrangle out something that is livable. Give me your take on that.
Well, I would be very surprised if the discussion were only focused on Ukraine. I mean, there's so many issues. And frankly, Ukraine is, and I don't mean this with any disrespect whatsoever to the Ukrainian people, for whom I feel tremendous sadness what's happened to their country and how they've been abused by the West and turned into this, festering wound in the heart of Europe to pursue a U.S. hegemonic project. But There are far more important things from the perspective of the Russian Federation, frankly, from the perspective of the world. And the first one at the top of the agenda is nuclear war. This is absolutely critical to the survival of all of humanity, that we reduce the threat of nuclear war and eliminate it eventually altogether. So if something was said by Witkoff in that discussion about nuclear disarmament, I could see that would help me to make sense of all of this, because I think that that is something that, you know, the rational leaders of Russia are very, very focused upon. But again, can you trust these people? Trump administration pulled the US out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, for Christ's sakes, man. I mean, come on. They destroyed the JCPOA, the Obama era nuclear deal with Iran. And now, as a result of that and the criminal war of aggression on Iran, Iran may actually have nukes. If it doesn't, it may develop them very shortly. So it's hard to believe that the Trump administration has has come to Jesus on the question of nuclear disarmament. But maybe they made some kind of soft commitments in that discussion between Witkoff and Putin, like reviving the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, finding some way out of this extraordinarily dangerous path that the U.S. is on with Iran. I could see that being sort of a cautious basis on the part of the Russian Federation to engage in these discussions, because I think that that's understandably far more important to them than Ukraine.
Yes, but it's all predicated on Ukraine.
Well, Ukraine's definitely an essential part of the puzzle, because if you have NATO on your doorstep, what do those nuclear disarmament agreements mean anyways? Do they really mean anything? You know,
Exactly.
If you have massive numbers of NATO soldiers, like a few hundred kilometers from Moscow in Ukraine, no. So I agree with you. It is an essential part of it, but these are things that might have added to the incentive on the part of the Russian Federation to take part in these discussions. And they might have also talked about the Arctic, how are we going to develop the Arctic together? They might have talked about how we're going to avoid a further war with Iran. All of that stuff may have been raised in the meeting with Witkoff. But whatever may have been said in the meeting with Witkoff, I would be shocked, Jamal, if the only thing that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin discuss on Friday is Ukraine. That would be astonishing to me.
Yeah, agreed. I know it sounds callous to be like Ukraine matters is part of the negotiation. Because my thing used to always be, if Ukraine is the negotiation, then you have no cards. Like, you've lost in Ukraine. You have no cards. So what are we really discussing other than a surrender, if indeed Ukraine is the only thing on the table? If it's, well, let's bring in the START treaty, let's bring in some kind of deals, let's bring in some kind of partnership, okay, well, that's different, right? That may be something that you do have cards in, that we can exchange these cards on Ukraine on some level. No, I agree with you entirely on this front.